Welcome to Crossroads. Chinese netizens are right now spreading a new poll on the lowering quality of life in China. And it's highlighting what they're now referring to as garbage time. Now, their lives are getting more difficult, and some of the luxuries that they used to enjoy, well, they're going away. And with this, they're also pointing out problems with the CCP's current economic theory, state interventionism. Now, the regime is facing an economic crisis. In a recent meeting of top-level CCP members to try to fix the whole crisis, well, they're not really offering solutions, but at the same time, they're going further into the policies of state interventionism and thus further into the economic policies of an even more authoritarian regime. Now, first, let's talk about what Chinese netizens are saying. The Guardian said that first there was a century of humiliation in which China was subjugated by Western powers. That's the CCP's narrative, by the way. But they add that then there was the era of reform and opening up, where China's rapid economic development paved the way for what was supposed to be the Chinese century. But now, according to social media users, China is in another epoch worth the name, the garbage time of history. They say in recent weeks, Chinese chat groups and WeChat feeds have been buzzing with discussions of whether China has entered a period of economic stagnation and recession in which failure is all but inevitable, called a garbage time of history. And it's a sentiment can be summed up by a graphic widely shared on social media, again in China, and since censored on Weibo, and it's entitled the 2024 Misery Ranking Grand Slam. It tallies up the number of misery points that a person might have earned in China this year. The first star is unemployment. For 2 stars, add a mortgage. For a full suit of 8 stars, you'll need the first 2 plus debt, child rearing, stock trading, illness, unfinished housing, and finally, hoarding of Mao Tai, a famous brand of baijiu. That's a type of liquor they have. Now, the phrase is inspired by, it says, and has been misattributed to the Austrian free market economist Ludwig von Mises, who argued against government intervention in the economy. Now, first of all, garbage time technically. It refers to that, lackluster part of a sports game in its final moments when you see that your team basically has no chance of ever coming back from defeat. But the idea going around with Chinese netizens is they're not talking about, sports. They're talking about the current economic failures in China and something fundamental, a failure built into the system itself, the economic policies of state interventionism that are doomed for failure. And this is the main reference. They're suggesting that these state policies, that the state interventionist policies, again, are what has led to this sports-like garbage time where you just have to watch your team fail and there's no way out of it. Now, the Ludwig von Mises reference is important. The concept of state interventionism is also what used to be described as one of the main problems with mixed socialist systems, and notably why their economies tend to fail. Now, he describes it specifically as a kind of third system between true capitalism and full socialism. It's that middle transition phase of so-called state capitalism, but as a road, notably, that just inevitably fails, based in terms of how it works. It leads either to total market collapse, and then you have 2 choices. Well, you can move away from state interventionism, or you can go the other way to full state control of business, similar to the form of socialism practiced under Nazi Germany. Now, based on this is what Mises said in his book, Planned Chaos. He said it is necessary to point out this fact to prevent a confusion of socialism and interventionism. He notes that the system of hampered market economy or interventionism differs from socialism by the very fact that it is still market economy. You still technically have somewhat of a free market, in other words. It's not total socialism. He notes the authority seeks to influence the market by the intervention of its coercive power, but it does not want to eliminate the market altogether. It desires that production and consumption should develop along lines different from those prescribed by the unhindered market, true capitalism. And it wants to achieve its aim by injecting into the working of the market orders, commands, and prohibitions for whose enforcement the police power and its apparatus of coercion and compulsion stand ready. All the state systems to regulate, control, and influence the markets. But he notes these are isolated interventions. Their authors assert that they do not plan to combine these measures into a completely integrated system which regulates all prices, wages, and interest rates, and which thus places full control of production and consumption into the hands of the authorities. And of course, that full control, where the government just totally controls everything, that would be socialism. That's how he differs it. He notes that, however, all the methods of interventionism are doomed to failure. Further, he states that if the government wants to make it possible, as one example, for poor parents to give more milk to their children, it must buy milk at the market price and sell it to those poor people with a loss at a cheaper rate. The loss may be covered from the means collected by taxation. In other words, the government collects taxes from its citizens and then uses some of those taxes to buy the product and then give it to the individual at a cheaper rate, right? But if the government simply fixes the price of milk, if they decide that's the route at a lower rate than the market, the results obtained will be contrary to the aims of the government. He says the marginal producers will, in order to avoid losses, go out of the business of producing and selling milk. A simple principle, right? Because under normal free market economies, prices regulate themselves. People who, of course, get involved in a business typically do because they want to make a living. And so, as they, of course, get in the business of milk, they're not doing it out of humanitarian reasons usually. They're doing it because it's their livelihood. They sell milk at the market value based in terms of what they need for their lives, their rents, what people are willing to pay, their competitors, and so on. And as soon as the government comes in and forces them to lower the prices, well, that's their profit, that's their livelihood. And why stay in a business that is facing that? Well, they don't, typically. And that's often why these businesses go out of business when you try to implement these policies. Of course, to different extents, right? But Mises notes there will be less milk available for the consumers, not more, if, again, the individual engaged in the business decides it's just not worth it anymore. He notes this outcome is contrary to the government's interventions. The government interfered because it considered milk as a vital necessity. It did not want to restrict its supply. Now the government has to face the alternative, either to refrain from any endeavors to control prices or to add to its first measure a second one. Maybe you fix the prices of the factors of production necessary for the production of milk, thereby interfering with another industry on top of that industry, right? He notes further in, but when this state of all-round control of business is achieved, once you maybe break the system and you need to go full on with the socialist system, he notes the market economy then has been replaced by a system of planned economy, by socialism. Meaning, of course, as the system expands, you break one thing through state interventionism, you have to fix another part of it, and then keep going and going until you've basically taken over a whole industry through tight regulation and state interventionism, or you've gone after the whole market. Unless you roll it back, this is the inevitable course of state interventionism. Now, Mises notes this is not the socialism of immediate state management of every plant by the government as in Russia, right, under the Soviet Union, but instead the socialism of the German or Nazi pattern. In other words, the type of system that large-scale state interventionism creates, if you implement it to its full extent, is closer to national socialism, the type of socialism practiced again in Nazi Germany. Now, look, of course, most so-called capitalist systems these days, almost all of them practice some degree of interventionism. Not total, but some degree. The world today does not really have any pure forms of capitalism. Nowhere. There's bits of state interventionism just about everywhere. But most countries, they don't go all in with it, other than, many of today's communist regimes, like the CCP, which is one of the main ones doing this. With the Chinese Communist Party, when it was under Deng Xiaoping, again, the ruler just after Mao Zedong, the one who did the reforms and opening up and try to make China into a market economy with socialism influencing it, China went from a more full Marxist system under, again, Mao Zedong and, military control of industry and so on, to having the mixed economy of state capitalism, or the third system of interventionism. That has been the policies of the CCP. Now, the CCP's system since then, the whole reform and opening up, it has been a mixed system of the two, but in a more extreme extent. But now the CCP has reached the end of the line on state interventionism. I'll be talking more about this after we come back from a quick break.
Experts agree. One of the best ways to protect against financial uncertainty is to diversify your portfolio. Learn how physical gold and silver can secure your retirement funds from today's economic challenges with a gold IRA from American Hartford Gold. You can safeguard your wealth with no penalties or taxes when you transfer your current qualifying retirement accounts. Call now and our precious metals specialists will send you a free information kit, no cost or obligation. American Hartford Gold, a trusted industry leader with an A+ from the Better Business Bureau, has a 5-star rating from thousands of happy clients. Whether you are getting physical precious metals in a gold IRA or delivered to your doorstep, we offer only the highest quality gold and silver. For your peace of mind, we also offer a no-fee buyback commitment, a low price guarantee, along with free shipping and free insurance. So don't wait. Call the number on your screen today and secure your financial future.
Welcome back. The Chinese Communist Party is facing an economic crisis. Lives are getting more difficult in China, and some of the luxuries that they used to enjoy, well, they're going away for people. And with this, they're also pointing out problems with the CCP's current economic theory, state interventionism, the socialist influence of the market system. Now, when the Chinese Communist Party was under Deng Xiaoping in the 1980s, just after the rule of Mao Zedong, it went from a more full Marxist system to having the mixed economy of state capitalism, or the third system of interventionism. The CCP system since then, the whole reform and opening up, it has been a mixed system of interventionism in the more extreme extent. But now the CCP is reaching the end of the line on state interventionism. The current economic problems, they are forcing it to adopt market reforms. So it's left with two choices. Well, either you drop the forms of state interventionism, you get rid of the socialist policies, and you move towards a more free market capitalist system. Or you go the other way. You go back to the days before Deng Xiaoping's reforms to a more direct form of state control under communism, right? Marxism and Leninism and stuff. So what's the CCP doing? Well, this is what we just saw happen under the recent third plenum of the Communist Party's top leadership. They just had the big meeting with the top leaders of the CCP to decide the new direction of China's economy and its plans to address all the problems they're facing right now. The decision they made, just announced, was not to open things up further and have true capitalism, as I suggested they probably do. The decision they announced of the CCP's heads was to move towards a more authoritarian economic system. Financial Times says this: China's leaders have warned of risks in areas such as the country's slumping property market, government debt, and financial institutions at a top Communist Party meeting, and called for tighter social controls to ensure stability. More state intervention. The party's Central Committee gave security the same level of importance as economic growth, as it warned of geopolitical risks, saying China should, quote, lead global governance, as it concluded the third plenum, one of its most important meetings, where it sets out medium to long-term policies. Let me show you the actual announcement from the CCP itself. This is the CCP Ministry of Foreign Affairs. It says this: it was stated that we must ensure both development and security. To this end, we will implement various measures for preventing and diffusing risks in real estate, local government debt, small and medium financial institutions, and other key areas. They say as well, quote, we will strengthen the network for preventing and controlling public security risks so as to safeguard social stability. We will improve public opinion guidance and effectively deal with risks in the ideological domain. So, in other words, the CCP is going to be playing more of a direct role in things, right? They're going to intervene even further. It is going to coordinate these issues more directly. And notably, it says it will increase state propaganda and even internal controls for things like so-called social stability, one of the new buzzwords going around in China. Now, of course, the CCP is still being vague on these actual policies and how they plan to actually implement it. But here's what they declare is the basis of the new reforms to the economic system. And again, this is the CCP Ministry of Foreign Affairs. It says, it was stressed that to further deepen reform comprehensively, we must stay committed to Marxism, Leninism, Mao Zedong thought, Deng Xiaoping theory, the theory of three represents, and the scientific outlook on development, and fully implement Xi Jinping thought on socialism with Chinese characteristics for a new era. Now also, it says further in, it was stated that the overall objectives of further deepening reform comprehensively are to continue improving and developing the system of socialism with Chinese characteristics and modernize China's system and capacity for governance. The declaration also says that the CCP plans to have its new socialist market system up and rolling by 2035, 10 years from now. So seemingly they believe it's going to be a long road before they see any real improvement. It's a model for what they're calling slow growth, meaning again, they don't seem to believe they can bounce back from the current problems anytime soon. And that of course raises some real questions about what that means for the Chinese economy in the meantime. I'll be talking more about what's next for the Chinese economy exclusively on EpochTV.com. That's the uncensored streaming platform of the Epoch Times. So if you're watching on YouTube, Facebook, X, Rumble, there's a link in the description below. Click on that, you can get access to the rest of this episode. And not only that, but also my whole library of shows, our family-friendly movies, our premium investigative reports, and our hard-hitting documentaries on issues that really matter, like the Chinese Communist Party's 100-year plan to defeat the United States, which I expose in my documentary, The Final War. The CCP is one of the biggest threats to this country. They're using things like video games, entertainment, movies, culture to subvert and influence the next generation. This unrestricted war against our country is one of the scariest but least understood issues of our time because it's not really tangible. There's no tanks or bombs. It's all being done through soft power and ideological subversion. Now, I've spent over a decade investigating the CCP subversion, and it's such an important issue that I've dedicated my career to warning people about the threats of the CCP. So if you want to find out more about what exactly the CCP is plotting against this country, watch The Final War. You can find the link in the description below, and I'll show you all the trailer before we go exclusively to EpochTV.com for the rest of this episode. I'll see you there.
The greatest threat facing the United States is the CCP.
The Epoch Times investigation team had studied the CCP for years, but what we uncovered was yielding evidence beyond our imagination.
With Chairman Mao, with the Prime Minister, our talks have been characterized by frankness.
The Clinton administration said, oh, don't worry about it. This will be a poison pill for China.
China's strategic goal is to make sure that the U.S. has 4 enemies, and one of them must be a terrorist group.
We are giving of our life's blood so that the Chinese Communist Party can survive and thrive.